All right, folks, welcome back. This is yet another chapter in the whole Happy Meal toy design thing. If you remember last video I did, I made the Batman on the surfboard with the magnets and kind of super deformed chibi style, kind of cartoony style. But that was pretty much a static figure. Didn't really do anything. I did put some magnets in the feet so it would stick to the skateboard and it rolled. But it still was kind of a, it wasn't completely kinetic. So I wanted to do another video to kind of show some different ways you can integrate moving parts into your toy. Let's say you want to make it walk or shoot a missile or do something, more practical. How would you go about doing that? So you might remember, you're going to want to have your sketches and your ideas drawn out first. So the first stage is always going to be sketching out ideas on paper. You want to sketch out a lot of ideas. Think of, your theme and all kinds of different, actions or things that go along with that. So, and pick something that you like, something that you're familiar with. So I've started, I've shown these before. I just started filling up pages of different things because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I wanted to do my character. This is my comic character that I do. Then I started doing some Spider-Man stuff. And then I kind of wound up going into Batman because that's just my default because I like Batman so much. And I started just coming up with different, thinking of different parts of the show, what they did, climbing up buildings or driving in a vehicle or a car, or, there's the whole detective crime solving aspect of Batman. So what if you, have some things where you make containers that have, I don't know, crime fighting clues, code breaker stuff, or stickers, stampers. It doesn't matter what the idea is. Just if you think of it, sketch it out and see. And, you might decide, oh, that's going to be too hard or whatever. But don't ever discount an idea before you, consider it with a sketch. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. These are really quick, simple sketches. So like, a board game, or, here's the decoder things, and maybe put a pencil in the head and there's paper. So like if you're, doing secret message stuff or crime solving, I don't know, just thinking of goofy stuff. Here's the surfboard thing. So for all these designs, this is what I wound up actually doing. And this is done in the TV style, which you probably already know. What if he, shot a batarang out of his hand, or a missile, or the Joker has water that squirts out. So there's different things you can think of. So, you remember from last time I did the Batman surfing, which was a very infamous episode of the show. So now I've got these little wind-up walking little engine things that I got from Amazon. You can buy a pack of them for not very much money. You wind up the motor and it walks like that. So I thought about doing a Robin wind-up walker. So this is what it looks like kind of like the guts of it. The idea is I want to now sculpt around this to make it, a working toy. The problem is I can't heat this up or put it in the oven because it'll melt the plastic and then it won't work anymore. So I got to find a way to sculpt around this and separate it somehow. Now, there is air drying polymer clay that you can buy. I haven't actually tried it yet. From what I understand, it's a little, it doesn't hold detail as well as regular Sculpey. But it doesn't need to be baked. You don't have to cure it in the oven, which is the plus side of it. So you can always just sort of sculpt, let it dry, and then if you need to do more, kind of sculpt on top of it. But I'm going to try it this way first. So what I'm planning on doing, my idea, is to get some tin foil and kind of create a little endoskeleton, but it's also going to be like a sheath that I can sculpt around and then lift off and then bake separately and then stick back on top when I'm done. So this is kind of where I'm at so far. I got some tin foil. I'm using tin foil because it's very lightweight. Remember, you don't want to use anything too heavy because it might weigh, if this gets too heavy and weighs it down too much, it won't walk, which we don't want. So no melting in the oven, and we want to keep it pretty lightweight. So tin foil is a great way to do that. So I just got some tin foil and kind of wrapped it around and made sort of a basic kind of a form here, kind of a big head. And I started out by doing some turnaround sketches, which is something that you will all need to do. I did these for the Batman thing I did as well. So you just want to have like, you know, kind of like a model sheet, kind of like an animator would use. But this is called a turnaround sketch. And this is so you can see what your toy should look like from different angles and just get a sense of where the mechanisms are, that sort of thing. Okay? So I got some reference. I did some sketching. I made sure that everything was kind of proportional to each other. Again, I'm going cartoony with it, you know, kind of the big head, you know, little body. I'm not worrying about realism here, but I do want it to at least kind of resemble the actors from the show. So the Batman one I did, I tried to make it look like Adam West, you know, to a degree. And this I wanted to kind of look like Burt Ward, the actor that played Robin in the show. But, you know, it's not going to be super realistic in terms of likeness, and that doesn't matter. All right, so I'm referring to this. You definitely want to have your sketches. Everything always begins on paper. And then if you remember what I always talk about in Art 1 and even Art 2 is the whole idea of working from general to specific. So I'm going to start off again with this really simple kind of form here out of tin foil. And I'm really just worrying, you know, thinking about proportions, like how big is the head to the body, you know, don't make it too tall, you know, all that sort of thing. And then, of course, you want to always test this and make sure, all right, see how he's walking this way? So I know that the knob has to be on the left-hand side. All right. Because if I do it the other way, he'll be walking backwards, which, you know, might be kind of funny, but we don't want that. Okay, so the next step now is once you have your sketches done and you've figured out what your idea is and you've sketched it out, and then you have whatever parts you need. In this case, I have, just like the last video, I've got my sculpting tools here. I've got my art. I've got some Sculpey here. Okay. I've got my tin foil here. So I've got all my materials together. Now it's just a matter of adding Sculpey on top of this. And again, adding a minimal amount. I want to use as little Sculpey as I can because, again, I don't want this to get too heavy. So be very conservative with the amounts of Sculpey you use. You want just enough to cover. Now, if your Sculpey has been sitting around for a little bit, like this has for me, you just want to work it with your hand a little. And if it's a little stiff, this will soften it up. Just kind of work it with your fingers for a minute, get it going. You could add a little bit of this stuff, which is clay softener. You don't want to add too much, just one tiny little drop or just a little on your finger and kind of work it in to soften it. If you use too much, it gets really oily and it actually breaks down the clay too much, and you don't want that. So now I'm looking at whatever reference I have as well as my actual art that I have, and now I'm just trying to, you know, sculpt Robin. So just start off with little thin amounts of Sculpey like this. And, you know, it'll take a little time. Be patient. And you want to just add very thin layers of Sculpey around your figure. Now, what I would also recommend you do is, as you're sculpting, the more you handle this, you know, I find this happens a lot. Like as I sculpt and I have details, if I handle it and start touching it and turning it around, I'm actually ruining some of the details that I put in, and I have to keep resculpting stuff. So you might want to, once you have the measurements down and you know things are gonna fit, find some other, cut this. Like so, there we go. Some other thing to build this on. So for example, I don't know, I have a little piece of cork here, a cork from a wine bottle. I could stick that in and, you know, use that as kind of a base to sculpt with. And then when I'm done, slip it back on top like so. Okay. So now I'm going to switch to time-lapse mode because this is going to take too long in real time. So you'll see me with my fingers furiously flying around, covering this with Sculpey, and then I will pick this up on the other side and talk about the next step. So remember, I'm working from general to specific. I'm not worrying about any details yet. All the details in the sketch, like his hair and his face, his mask, I'm not worrying about any of that yet. I'm just trying to get this covered with a nice, thin, even layer of Sculpey. So I'm covering up the tin foil and I'm giving myself a nice uniform surface to sculpt on top of. All right, so I'm gonna switch to time-lapse mode and then we will continue. Okay, so back from our first little time-lapse, little moving forward in time trick here. As you can see, I have gotten my tin foil armature covered with a thin layer of Sculpey. I've still got some shaping to do on it, but it's starting to resemble something. I've still got more to do. As you can see, I've started to give him a little bit of a chin and just starting to feel out the basic shape of the head. But again, I'm not worrying about details right now. I'm looking at the big picture, relationships of proportion and size and things like that. So I might go a little bigger with the head, but again, I really want to be cautious that I don't add too much Sculpey. I still want to be as minimal as I can with the amount of Sculpey I'm adding because again, I don't want this to get too heavy. So the idea is I'm now in this next stage of sculpting, I want to slowly start figuring out you know, nose, eyes, you know, and I can kind of mark this with one of my sculpting tools, you know, kind of figure out the shape of the mask, start figuring out his hairline, adding a little bit more sculpting on top, you know, his ears. So again, I'm still not worrying about detail yet, but I'm starting to, you know, indicate where proportions are, make sure my spacing is correct, make sure I'm staying pretty true to my concept art, my turnaround drawing. And I'm just going to slowly build up to the details. So again, I'm just going to kind of keep slowly adding more and more layers of detail and sculpey to this. And eventually get to the point where I'm doing like the collar, and I'll, you know, give him arms, and, you know, continue working on his face and trying to, you know, match this as closely as possible. And trying to keep it as smooth as I can. And then the next stage, once I'm all finished sculpting, will be to pop this off. Could almost be a finger puppet. But this is hollow inside, as you can see. So once I bake this and put it in, once I'm all done sculpting, I will put it in the oven and bake it. And then I will just slip it right on top like so. And hopefully that'll work. We'll see. A lot of this is trial and error and experimentation, which is, you know, one of the reasons why we're doing this assignment in the first place. You don't always know if these things are going to work. You just have to learn by failing, honestly. And, you know, sometimes you screw up really badly, but you learn something, and then you try again and you do a much better job. So if you're struggling with this up to now, just please keep in mind that you just need to take your time, look at your reference, remember work from general to specific. And again, if you can draw it, you can sculpt it. You just need to kind of keep rotating, you know, your toy and make sure it's matching each side of your turnaround sketch. That's why it's there for reference. So eventually I'm going to, you know, compare the front to that. I'm going to compare the profile view to that. And I'll compare the back view to that. And hopefully it'll be pretty closely matched. All right, so I'm going to switch over to time lapse again, and the next time we talk, only a few minutes will have elapsed for you, but for me, it'll probably be a couple hours. But now I'm going to, you know, at least I'm going to start adding more detail and get it to the next stage. So, all right. Check back with you all in a bit. All right, folks. Been sculpting on this for a little bit now. And as you can see, I've got some basic details starting to happen here for the face and the head. I've kind of got his hairline sort of sculpted out. You know, I'm trying to make it match pretty closely to the reference drawing. Not perfect, but you know, again, this is just a beginning stage type of thing. Still haven't really done anything on the body yet. I'm going to do that next. I definitely have more refining to do in the face, but I think for now I will leave that as is and move on to other parts of the figure, and then I'll come back to it. You know, I might change his, you know, I might try to have him more smiling instead of just giving him like that generic kind of mouth, and his nose needs a lot of work. But you know, it's starting to come along. So I'm just going to continue refining things. I'm going to continue looking at other reference and things like that. I'll start getting his costume and clothing down. And of course, all the while, I am testing how this fits on my little motor here. You know, making sure that everything continues to slide on top of there. I need to move this over a little bit. I'm kind of doing this one-handed, so it's a little difficult, but find that little notch there. Right. So that's what my guy looks like. Okay. So, you know, it's giving me a sense of proportion and how things are fitting together. Again, I'm trying to keep this as lightweight as possible because, again, if this is too heavy, he's not going to walk. But I think for now, give him a little twist. Yeah, see, he's walking okay. So, so I'll continue putting this on here and testing how things fit and everything. But I'm not going to keep it on here. I'm going to take this off. I can do this one-handed. Yep, pops right off. I'll put it back on my little cork base here that I made for sculpting. And I'm just going to keep working with it. So I'm going to switch back to time-lapse mode and start adding more details to the body and refining the face a little more. So we're going to do another kind of layer of detail. And again, we're just going to work very slow, work from general to specific, and just keep going. All right. All right, so as you can see, I've added more details and refinement on the figure here. Sculpted the body, as you saw from the time lapse. So now, when you're happy with the results and you want a smooth, pretty smooth sculpt, you don't want any rough edges or indentations, fingerprints, that sort of thing. Because once you bake this, it's pretty much set. The details are set. And you can sculpt on top of it, but you can't really smooth it out. So now would be the time, check over your sculpt at the last minute, see if there's anything else you want to touch up, smooth out, etc. But then when it's ready to go, you're going to put it in a oven that's preheated at 275, and it shouldn't take more than about 10 minutes. And just like we did before, you're going to put it in like a Corningware glass dish, something like this, or Pyrex. Don't bake it on metal because you run the risk of it burning, okay? But again, you're not baking the plastic parts because those will melt. So I removed this from the plastic. Now I'm going to bake this separately. And then gently put him in there, put him in the oven, and then we'll see what he looks like when he's done. All right, folks, I'm back, and I have baked my sculpt, so it's nice and firm now. It's fully cured, so, and as you can see, I can slip him right on and off the base, the wind-up base, which is exactly what I want. So now I can go on to the next step, which is painting, which is, the funnest part to me. Again, you want to make sure that everything is nice and smooth and that your sculpt is kind of the way you want it to be. This looks pretty close, as you can see, to my original sketches. A few minor differences, like, I decided to bend his arm slightly there just to kind of make it a little asymmetrical. The likeness is good enough. It doesn't look exactly like Burt Ward, but that's okay. And again, I used kind of cartoony, chibi style proportions, so I didn't have to worry about being super realistic. But it looks like the character, and it looks consistent with the other toy I did. Sorry, my dog won't stop barking. He's outside. So I'm ready for the next step, I think. So this is nice and solid now. I baked it in the oven at for about 10-15 minutes at 175 in the oven in a little Pyrex dish. So now I'm going to paint. Now to paint, I'm going to use acrylic paint. Now these are, you're familiar with these because we've used these in class many times. These Utrecht paints that come from a tube. I'm going to need for this character yellow, red, green, white, and black. And maybe a little bit of brown, which I will mix by combining the two primaries of red and green together. That should make a nice brown, maybe with a little bit of yellow added. All right, so if you have your acrylic paints from before, you can just use those. We should have some like community, like class sets in class where you can use shared. If you want to go buy your own, you're certainly welcome to. You can find some that aren't very expensive, especially if you buy these are like craft paints, which are, basically acrylic paint, but they're much cheaper than these. The quality is maybe not quite as good, but it's pretty decent. So these would work okay if you were buying your own and you didn't want to spend a lot of money. I believe, well, it's been a while since I've checked, to be honest. These used to be like 99 cents at Michael's or Hobby Lobby. The price may have gone up on them slightly because the prices have gone up on pretty much everything. But I still wouldn't imagine they'd be real expensive. They might be, I'd still say they would probably be less than $2 for a bottle. So you can use these types of acrylics as well if you want to do something slightly cheaper. But I am going to use my Utrechts, okay? So what I've also done, and this is optional, you don't have to do this, is I've taken my cork that I had and glued it to just the lid of a pill bottle. to give myself a little stand. Because when you're painting, one thing you might notice is that as you're painting, you're kind of having to hold on to it as you paint, and you're going to get paint on your hands and you don't want to touch anything that's wet. So by having a little stand here, you can paint it and give him something to kind of rest on while he dries. And again, these are acrylic paint, so these should dry pretty quickly. So I just kind of made myself a little stand there so that he can just go on there and I can work as I go. Okay, so that's basically it. And this is, for me, kind of the funnest part is, the sculpting's fun, but it really comes to life when you paint it. So I'm going to try to keep my colors nice and bright. Flat color is all that's needed. You don't need to get fancy with it. And what I'm probably going to do on the parts that are going to be yellow, like his cape, and maybe here on the little chest symbol, I'm going to prime it with some white paint first and then paint yellow over it. Yellow, as you know, is a translucent color, which means that it's not opaque. So no matter how many coats you put on, you're going to see through it. It's like kind of transparent. But by putting white down first, which is an opaque color, I'm going to kind of give it like a primer coat. And that'll make the yellow look even more brilliant when it's painted. So just throwing that out there. All right, so at this point, I'm going to switch over to time lapse again, and then you'll see me paint this up. I'm probably going to, even though the Sculpey that I used is beige colored, so it's kind of already, skin colored, I'm probably going to mix up my own batch of skin color for him and paint over it with a little bit of red and white and yellow all mixed together, and then paint over the Sculpey. All right, so that's pretty much it as far as explaining what I'm going to do. So now I'm going to paint it up, so we will talk again on the other side when I'm done. And just for the record, if you're curious, I'd say in terms of number of hours I put in on this so far, I'd say it's, taken me about 4 or 5 hours to get to this point, for everything, including the tin foil, making the armature, sculpting over top, and baking, and all the other, the refinements and stuff. So I'd say it's about 5 hours tops so far. I don't know how long it's going to take me to paint this, maybe another hour or two. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, so it wasn't like an extreme amount of time. But again, I'm more experienced with this. It'll probably take you longer, but just know that this isn't something that's going to take days and days and weeks to do. If you have a good idea and a plan and you have all the materials together, it shouldn't take you like forever to do this. But your mileage may vary. But anyway, all right, so moving on to the painting phase now. Well, folks, I hate to break it to you, but I tried doing the time lapse of my painting, and basically something happened. At some point, I didn't notice my camera had actually kind of tilted and went off frame. So I didn't really catch like 90% of the painting process, unfortunately. But, I think that that's pretty self-explanatory. I may or may not post what I captured because it's only about 45 seconds and half of it you can't even see because it's off frame. But anyway, this is the finished result. this might all be all that matters. So this is my wind-up walker, and I put several coats of paint on him before I primed it. So there you go. I could still do a few little touch-ups, and I probably will, but this is, you know, I'd say 99, 98, 99% done. So, and well, let me see if I can do this. I don't think I can turn it enough one-handed. Well, there you go. I need two hands to do this, and I'm holding my phone with one of them. But basically, he walks. So he works. And there you go. So that's pretty much it. So again, I'll splice all these together into one video. Basically, you saw me start out with the sketches, and then, you know, just a review. I started out with turnaround sketches, and then I made a tinfoil armature. I had my little wind-up motor ready to go. I made it removable, a removable sheath. Right now it's still loose. I could pop it off, but I might glue it in place later. Okay, so built the tinfoil armature so that it's lightweight. He's pretty light because I use the tinfoil and he's not solid sculpey. And then once I built the tinfoil armature, I started sculpting the character and kept making sure that it fit, you know, on the removable little motor there. And once I got the sculpt the way I wanted it to, then I baked it in an oven at 175 degrees for about 15 minutes, just by himself without the motor inside, otherwise it would melt. And then once he came out of the oven and he was cured and hardened, then I painted him. I primed him with some white paint, and then used my reference, which honestly I didn't really need because I already know his colors. And then I painted him up, and, you know, took a few coats in some areas. And now he's done. And now he's kind of like a companion piece to the Batman, surfing Batman I made in the last video. Maybe I'll photograph them both together. They're slightly out of scale. One, you know, the Batman's much bigger, but that's okay. I had to make Robin pretty small because the size of the wind-up motor was small. So anyway, I might do another video showing how to use air dry clay. If you don't want to go through the trouble of baking, I have another design in mind that if I have time, I will do another one, but we'll see how it goes. But anyway, sorry the time lapse on the painting got screwed up. I didn't catch that. That's a rookie mistake on my part. But anyway, you get the gist. I mean, it's just painting. It's not, you know, you guys will figure that out. All right, so that's it. Thanks for watching. Hope it helps. Hope it's informative. And we'll talk again soon.